On the cover of the box is an image of a glorious sight, a majestic mountain rising from the prairie floor. Wild horses graze in the forefront, and the light which reflects in the back of the scene appears to glow, almost heaven-sent. The child sits enthralled with the image before her and quickly begins to open the box. 1,000 pieces, all scored and different, cascade onto the living room floor, forecasting for the little girl the task that lies ahead. An image can be easily created in the mind, but the reality of that creation is as difficult as searching, fitting, and interlocking successfully all those pieces in the right order. What would happen if the puzzle is 3/4 done and the pieces that are left didn't fit? Can they be forced? How about taking scissors and recutting them? Or does the original image get altered and the creator settles for less? America's greatest treasure and most intriguing puzzle, the American Constitution, was crafted by 55 men who would not compromise the standards. At first, it can seem confusing with topics as varied as quartering soldiers in homes, involuntary servitude, outlawing alcohol, letting people vote, and creating a navy. But then you study it. You take the time to learn the history behind the words, and the pieces fit together. You realize that each part of the Constitution relates to another part. The Constitution creates a legislative branch to represent the will of the people and pass laws. It creates an executive branch with broad but checked powers and with the freedom to lead, but not to become a dictatorship. The Constitution also creates a system of justice that has trained, skilled, professional jurists whose sole purpose is to interpret the law. This system of checks and balances carefully fit together and has protected us from fanaticism and assured us that no one person is allowed to run amok with power. When we put these pieces together, we have a very compact yet complex document. For almost 10 generations, the few precious but well-planned words in our American Constitution have firmly guided our people. Our Constitution survives because it is a living document whose interpretations become richer as the world changes. And a question arises over how to imply the intentions of men over 220 years ago to an age that they never could have imagined. Let's take a few examples. The First Amendment grants us the freedom of religion. Specifically, we're promised that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The Founding Fathers saw religious diversity as an asset and protected everyone's religion. Or did they? Sometimes the constitutional puzzle can be complicated. What happens, for instance, if your religion requires that you share a communion of wine in a place where alcohol is forbidden? Our courts have had to interpret similar questions and have held that the First Amendment protects that right. But there are limits on the freedom of religion. In Church of Lukumi Babalu I Incorporated versus City of Hialeah, considered by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1993, it was held that the government can prevent people from exercising a religion that, for example, requires the inhumane slaughter of animals. But the freedom of religion isn't the only right protected under the Constitution. The First Amendment goes on to say that Congress shall not abridge the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is an important right because it allows us to say what we want and to speak up without fear. It gives us the absolute right to speak our minds, even if our ideas might be unusual. But does it really? Am I free to falsely accuse someone of a crime? What if I want to petition the government for a redress of grievances by loudly protesting outside of my mayor's home? Does the First Amendment require me to be polite and timid with my speech? Or am I entitled to lead a protest march? Can I threaten the president and claim that I'm merely petitioning for a redress of grievances? Where do we draw the line between assertive redress of grievances and a threat. These are all pieces of the puzzle, and the Supreme Court has answered the questions and interpreted the words of our founding fathers in an era with 300 million citizens, spread across hundreds of thousands of square miles and networked by television, telephone, radio, and the internet. In the last few years, the Supreme Court has been addressing a new kind of freedom of speech issue, cases dealing with symbolic speech. Since the 1990s, states have passed laws prohibiting certain symbols because of their historic association. Virginia passed a law, for example, making it illegal to display a burning cross because of its past use as a tool to intimidate minorities. In 2003, this law was challenged when a man named Barry Black led a Ku Klux Klan rally on private property in Carroll County, Virginia. As part of that rally, and with the property owner's permission, he burned a cross and was subsequently arrested. The Supreme Court ruled against Black and held that the government can create laws prohibiting the burning of crosses. Justice O'Connor wrote in her opinion in Virginia versus Black in 2003 that the government is allowed to regulate certain types of expression when they have little social value and the harm to society is greater than the overall need to protect free speech. In the case of burning crosses, she concluded, the intimidation caused by the act does more to harm free speech than promote it. The more we try to apply the Constitution to our daily lives, the more pieces emerge. It's so simple to our rights, yet in a modern society, it can be so complicated to figure out what those rights are. When we were guaranteed the right to bear arms in 1789, could the signers have imagined that this might include missiles and grenades rather than muskets and axes? When it was written that excessive bail would not be levied against a person accused of a crime, could it be imagined that the accused might be able to get on a plane and flee the country within a matter of hours? When it was written that all persons shall be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, could George Washington have guessed that a court 200 years later would be asking whether an infrared camera mounted to a helicopter or a piece of computer spyware loaded to a laptop constitutes a search? These are all the questions facing today's legal scholars. As Americans, we have an obligation to read and understand the Constitution. We have a duty to listen to its words and try to apply them to a modern age. We must understand that each right granted to us carries with it a responsibility to vote, a responsibility to take part in political process, and a responsibility to pursue our emerging understanding of this very powerful document. Our Constitution has survived because 55 men gathered in a sweltering Philadelphia room and wrote with an eye to the future. They weren't interested in glory or power. They didn't care about making themselves kings, and they weren't afraid to give up control when the people got tired of them. Our founding fathers were tolerant, and they provided for individual rights and freedoms to allow their people to flourish. At the heart of our Constitution is a respect for people and ideas. And because the drafters valued the people have revered the document. Just like our founding fathers, the little girl is tolerant and will not settle for less. She sits deep in concentration. The cover of the box has long been discarded. In her mind, she sees the image, knows its importance, and bravely moves forward one piece at a time to reach her goal. It may not happen today or even tomorrow, but as she works the pieces, the process becomes clearer. The U.S. Constitution is a living document that was created to be a puzzle of interlocking pieces that could change with each new generation. Thank you.